Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and we're back again with another Spirit Island video. Today, we're taking a look at some more stats. We're taking a look at the Spirit Island Data Analysis series by Jonathan Webb. We're looking at articles numbers 9, 10, and 11. That is an overview of France, Habsburg, and Russia. In the last video, I covered Prussia, Sweden, and England, and those are three very basic adversaries. They each have a specific specialty in either the Explore, Build, or Ravage, and thus we saw that the types of spirits that are good against those adversaries are uniquely able of handling those types of different threats. Now, France, Habsburg, and Russia are all much more complicated, and so I suspect that it's not going to be so blatantly obvious why certain spirits are or are not as effective. This is my very first time taking a look at these. It's a true, genuine reaction. I'm not faking it. I'm not looking at these things ahead of time, so I might have to chop this up a little bit if I have to read through some charts. There will be tons of numbers, so in the description of this video, I'm going to have links to these articles, so that way you can follow along as you see fit. If this is your first time seeing one of these data videos, basically this guy, Jonathan Webb, was given access to millions of games from Handelabra between the end of Jagged Earth and before the release of Feather and Flame, or at least the second promo pack. And so with these millions of games, you can take all kinds of data, chop it up, and find lots of really interesting, fascinating information. He gets into some of the methodology here and how he removes certain types of data that might not be useful. You can see here that he is removing games that don't use events and tokens, games that use, some of the different modifiers to make it easier, second wave scenario, things like that, in order to make this data as consistent as possible. So anyways, with that being said, we're starting with Article 9. This is France. So number of games played by each spirit against France. And this is true solo. And we can see that Fangs and Keeper are the two most popular spirits, which is fun, right? Because that is the Branch and the Claw. Those are the two spirits that were released in combination with France. And so it does seem pretty cool that that is the grouping of most popular spirits that exists. There's over 113,000 total games of solo against France played, and yet not even 800 of them came from Shifting Memory of Ages. Whew, that's really sad. One thing I do find interesting, looking at like instead of looking at individual nodes, looking at the trends is something that I find interesting. Is we've already talked previously about how popular the level 6s are, right? Since that's the highest you can go for a single adversary. Once you become the type of player who plays the game a ton, you're going to just play at level 6 over and over and over again because there is no higher difficulty within the parameters that we're talking about here. This is actually before double adversaries was available. So this is really as high as it can go. And so the people that like the game the most, that are probably going to be the most skilled, are also playing the game the most. And that's why we see an absurd number of level 6. And it's just very interesting to me how consistent it is across all the different adversaries that level 5 is so unpopular. Here it's the least popular with less than 5,000 games played relative to almost 45,000 games. 9-to-1 ratio here. That's pretty nuts. Whoa, here's an interesting one. I just kind of picked this out. Thanks to the colors, it's easier to see outliers in the data. And right here across the bottom line, Shroud of Silent Mist, it's actually most popularly played at level 4. There's more games of Shroud against France 4 than there are against France 6 or any other level. Besides level 6, there's a dramatic gap as well. After they're in 462, 436, and then the next most populous level would be France 2 at only 207. So more than a double jump going up to the 4 and then the 6. That's just a really interesting anomaly that I see here. Very, very interesting to me. We can see the second most popular level is level 3. And I think level 3 for France, is that the one that adds starting towns? because it's double Explorer, then it's the Slaves Rebellion and the upgrades, and then I think level 3 is starting towns, then 4 is Triangle Trade, 5 is the irrelevant one, and then 6 is the extra Explorer on the Fear thing. Yeah, for me, for France, because level 5 really just doesn't add anything, I've always said that, like, if you're going to play France 4, you might as well just play France 5 because it's basically the same thing. And it seems that people are not taking my advice. That's crazy. I mean, that's how I approach it. Like, that's how I like to tell people, like, if you're going to be going against France 4, France 5 does affects like 4 spirits or something in the whole pool and a couple drafts. It's a very ignorable rule, but yet it's about half, half of the quantity of France 4. Anyways, moving on. Going into multi-spirit, we would reasonably expect this to be similar, and yet we have some jumps here. We have Ocean's Hunger Grasp and River Surges and Sunlight suddenly becoming the 2 most popular. Ocean is just a really popular team spirit in general. People love being able to push invaders into the ocean. But then Keeper shows up as number 3. Where's Sharp Fangs? Down here in number 6. Still a good number of plays, but almost half of the number of plays as Ocean. We can see there is 93,000 multi-spirit games. This could be anything from a 2-spirit game, and I think with Jagged Earth, they bumped it up to 6 players, so this could go all the way up to a 6-player game with 29,800 spirit plays. Remember, you could get 6 plays per one game at level 6. And then the trend seems to match, where level 5 is very unpopular, level 1 is very unpopular. Same here, right? They're the 2 least popular nodes. And then your 2 and your 3 were half as popular as a 6, but they were the next most populous ones. Not as dramatic as it was in solo with that gap. This is very interesting that Starlight is dramatically unpopular. I really like playing Starlight in multi-spirit just because I like having, pairing up with someone like a Lightning, right, where you forget the Raging Storm and then you can replace it with 2 really good cards. There's a lot of spirits that will happily trade one of their starting uniques with 2 minor powers, and they would love receiving that from Starlight. So this is really interesting that that's so low. We've got 4 spirits with less than 1,000 plays. Trickster, Memory once again, Shroud, and Starlight. Very surprising to me, especially compared to 8,000 plays on Ocean. All right, now for the spicy part against France is the win rates. And we can see that we have our win rates for every single level, and this is sorted by the level 6 win rate, not necessarily the average. So we can see, for example, Sunbright Whirlwind relative to Grinning Trickster. Sunbright Whirlwind has a lower average win rate across all levels, but it has a higher win rate at France 6, and that's why it shows up higher on the list. And this is a complete shock to me, honestly. This is true solo. Lure being the number 1 is a shock to me. I guess it makes sense. Lure's really good at killing off 2 explorers at a time. The types of threats that France presents is just different, right? If you imagine, something basic like a Prussia, right? They're going to explore. If they have an empty land, then you're going to have to deal with Explorer Town. With France, you'd have to deal with Explorer Town. And if there's an escalation, you have to deal with Explorer Town City. So individual lands, France will be hitting much harder if you don't interact with them quickly. And some spirits are just not as good at handling 2 explorers in a land at the same time, but Lure with the right innate is very, very good at that, just by having like a single beast token, and as long as you have 2 plants, range 0, you can just kill 2 explorers, no problem whatsoever, and you can deny a lot of things from happening. Of course, with Lure, you have to handle the coast. That's just normal, but you can make those inlands really, really easy to handle. So it makes sense that Lure does good. I guess I've never really thought of it that way. Lightning Swift Strike is a fascinating one here, too. Lightning's really good at killing towns, but Lightning has no explorer control at all, right? Raging Storm is our only tool, and of course, if you have the energy to play Raging Storm, it's extremely effective in this matchup. The problem is that Raging Storm costs a lot of money, and you can't reasonably expect to have the resources to pay and play that Raging Storm. So I'm really shocked to see that that's the number 2 best spirit in true solo. Really interesting to me. Now, Sharp Fangs, that makes a lot of sense, right? Sharp Fangs is really quick, really aggressive, and can handle France's problems before they have an opportunity to build where they're really hard to handle. And of course, Fangs also just has a card that says straight up, do not build in this land, which will allow you to get ahead of those problems. So that makes sense to me. Keeper, on the other hand, I feel like Keeper, between Sharp Fangs and Keeper, is the one that struggles a little bit more, just because you're not as good at handling 2 explorers in a single land. You would need to have 4 suns before your right innate can kick out 2 explorers. Now, you do get sun earlier in your tracks for free, and so I believe as early as turn 3, you'll be getting to 3 card plays with that bonus sun. So from turn 3 on, it's possible to kick out 2 explorers and drop the wilds. Maybe it's the fact that wilds is so absurdly effective against France, because if you deny the explorer, then you just, deny everything. That is a really, really powerful tool, which of course Keeper has in droves. So that makes sense. Now, Sunbright Whirlwind does not make sense as such an elite pick into France solo. The only thing I can imagine is if you go for your innate, you can do like the combo with it to basically destroy a lot of pieces in 2 adjacent lands. And the volume of damage that combo does is just perfect against France. It does just the right amount of damage in order to fully clear out an escalated land, as well as pick up a little extra value in a neighboring land. And maybe that's how people are able to get success. But I don't know. That's the one I'm really surprised about. Trickster makes a lot of sense, right? Strife, Slaves Rebellion. Volcano makes sense, especially when you consider the wild tokens, as we just talked about. Makes me really happy to see Many Minds at less than like a 90% win rate, because that spirit is a bit OP, and it was really dumb seeing like Many Minds like 95% win rate or whatever the hell, and then the entire rest of the roster like with like dozens of points win rate lower. It's nice to see Many Minds come back down to earth, and that's absolutely a byproduct of the loss condition. Later on in the article, I'm assuming these are structured like the other ones. It'll say why games end, and I suspect for Many Minds, they're going to be losing to that LC, since they don't have any ways of denying builds, and they're not really good at moving Dahan around. So while they're good at stopping ravages, they're not good at clearing lands. Actually, I realize I misspoke. There is a push and there is an action skip in Many Minds' suite of powers. So we can deny builds, but not easily and freely. Anyways, coming down to the bottom end, Vital Strength and the others, Shadows Flicker like Flames, those are going to be the worst at everything, because the base versions of those spirits is what we're talking about here, and the base versions of Shadows and Vital are easily the 2 worst spirits in the game. In a tough competition with Sunshine River. But Bringer Dreams and Nightmares is the one that I really expected to come all the way down to the bottom, since we can't kill things. That France loss condition is absolutely backbreaking. I believe it's Nature Incarnate that gave us the Sleep and Never Waken, the skip that removes explorers. That is exactly Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares elements. That is the single most important card for Bringer to draft for France and for Russia, which we'll get into later. But yeah, without that one card, like Bringer just, oh my god, can't even play. Now, Serpent is one that I'm absolutely shocked. Serpent coming in with a 16% win rate. We have a right innate, which kills a town, pushes a town, so we can handle Explore Town easy. Most 2-card combos that we'd play with the Spirit handles an Explore Town. Aegis Absorb, right? We could do like an AoE Defend 4 and then do a classic Double Defend. That one is really shocking to me. Heart of the Wildfire. This is one of the spirits that actually does care about France 5, and they care about it quite a bit. I do have this matchup on the channel, but the trick is basically if you draft any blight removal card, you should be able to get your 3 blight back before you flip the blight card. And if you can do that, you're sitting pretty. If you can't, well, whatever. You know, life goes on. But yeah, if you can get that extra blight removal and you can survive that 1 extra turn and you get your 3 blight back, makes the game dramatically easier. Now down here, we have the win rates for multi-spirit. And we can see Ocean's Hungry Grasp right to the top. Lightning Swift Strike, I think they were just second previously, and they retained their second position. At the very bottom, we've got Vital Strength once again, and Shadows has moved up several places. Wildfire, Bringer, Shroud, Serpent somehow still way down the bottom. That is Serpent being down at the bottom in a multiplayer game. What are we doing here? What are we doing? The win rates across the board are always going to be higher in multi-spirit. Multi-spirit is, we've already talked about this, but like multi-spirit is always easier just because, you know, teamwork and friendship. But when we're bottoming out at a 10% win rate for base vital strength, and now we're bottoming it out at almost 30%, yeah, I think the proof is in the pudding. The average win rate goes up from 40% up to 50%, 50.3%. Oh, actually, one thing. There was this video series that I did a year or so ago about level 6 aces, basically my recommendation for the best spirit into every matchup. And for France, I did Thunder Speaker, and where are they? They are sitting at 39.6% win rate. Oh no, did I lead the people astray? I was trying to pick a spirit that is like as low complexity as possible. Evidently, I should have picked Lightning Swift Strike. I don't know why, though, that Lightning is so high. Because I don't think this includes Pandemonium. Pandemonium Lightning obviously just absolutely cooks France. But Base Lightning? I don't know about that. Sunbright Whirlwind? I don't know why. I feel like these are like harder to play in general. A keeper I did for England. But yeah, I picked Thunder Speaker because I think it's a pretty straightforward, good matchup. Thunder Speaker's just really good at hitting lands one at a time. They're really good at that whack-a-mole thing. France doesn't go really wide, but they go really tall. You know, one after another, one after another. I feel like that leans into what Thunder Speaker can do, but evidently I'm wrong. Coming down here, Thunder Speaker gains 5% win rate, going up to 44.6, but still less than a coin flip. That makes me feel bad for that recommendation. Okay, yeah, just like the previous articles, they're missing something that I'd really want to see, which is taking the win rate of solo and then comparing it to the win rate of multi-spirit. And so give me 1 minute and we will build that article. All right, we got that right here. So I've got the solo win rate for level 6 in the red column, the multiplayer win rate in the green column, and then the difference on the right. So when the difference is a positive number, that means that they are better in solo than they are multiplayer. And when the difference is negative, it means that they're better in multiplayer than they are solo. And so as we can see here, only 5 spirits are better in solo, being Lure, Trickster, Keeper, Sharp Bangs, and Shroud, with Shroud being less than a 1% difference. Volcano being 1% in favor of multiplayer, going all the way down to a 32% win rate swing for Ocean, 29% for Starlight. Wow, that's very dramatic. River, 27%. All these guys going from like the 30s up to the 60s in win rate. That's pretty dramatic. Shadows is benefited like 25%, going from like the bottom to almost the bottom. Vital Strength, right? Huge boon, going from dead last place to still dead last place, but gaining 19% win rate in the process. Thunder Speaker being team reliant to 5 points. Oh yeah, Devouring Teeth. This is a spirit that I feel like is really nice into France. We have the 2 energy, 4 damage card, which is perfect for handling the 2 towns in a single land from France. We have a defend 9 and a escalated France land, ravages for 8, so it clears that really, or it defends it really effectively. Also, Eyes Watch from the Trees has a defend 8 as well, and they're also sitting good here. You can use that defend 8 on another spirit, and that's a really good thing for them. If someone's struggling to handle an escalation land, that's a really, really nice tool to have. Also, Eyes Watch has that double push, so being able to handle 2 explorers, deny a land. We can do 1 damage at range 0 on turn 1, for that 1 turn where that card's going to be effective, kick it for a major. Eyes Watch is a great choice there as well. All right, so this next chart will show us which individual rules cause us the most pain. So, talked about before, I was kind of, I was remembering, and I evidently remembered correctly, that France 3 is the setup change and France 4 is triangle trade. And so if we take a look from individual difficulty to individual difficulty, the ones that cause the biggest swings. So Stone's Unyielding Defiance loses 42% of his win rate. If you take a look at the win rate of Stone against France 1 versus Stone at France 2. So Stone at France 1, that's number of games played, but this is our win rate. All right, so Stone at France 1 has an 85% win rate, and then France 2 has a 43% win rate, right? So that loss of about 42 percentage points is what we're going to see represented in this chart here. So that's a really dramatic one, and France 2 is where you really start to get pressured by that loss condition. And so we can see that's where there's almost every single dramatic drop is right here. 41 being the biggest. Looks like we got Serpent loses 37 percentage points here. We've got Bringer Dreams and Nightmares loses 27. That makes a lot of sense. Not being able to remove those things, losing to the loss condition. Wildfire gains 9 points. That's funny. Fathomless Mud of the Swamp. Yes, Fathomless Mud. That's another one. Another Horizon Spear with an interesting interaction here. The way that your Sacred Site rule works to basically deny the build, the upgrades and all that stuff, if there's exactly 1 explorer in the land before it builds, then you do not get your upgrades. But if there are 2 explorers in the land, then you will get upgrades. It says, after invaders build in a land with 2 or more explorers, then replace, right? But if you have only 1 explorer, and then your build adds an explorer instead of adding a town, the build action happened in a land that only had 1 explorer in it, so therefore you do not get the back half of the France 2. Okay, that's a really important thing to remember, and I suspect that a lot of people screw that up, and that's why you're going to see a loss of 34% win rate as people learn the hard way, or maybe they don't learn, and they just keep losing to it, and they can't understand why, it's just not working the right way. What's going on? But what's interesting is that Fathomless Mud against France 4 gains 35% win rate, so all those losses come right back at France 4. And I can only imagine that that is a byproduct of player selection, where the type of person who understands that little interaction, they're pushing themselves up the difficulty, and then maybe they find France 4 to be a comfort spot, and they can do really, really well. A 30% positive bump for Shroud at France 4. That's very interesting, because France 4 just accelerates the loss condition. I don't know what would make it easier. The only thing I can imagine is, player selection bias. But then, because there's a puddles of 29 at 4, and then a negative 29 at 5. Maybe we have a Dr. Ocean type of situation, and there's one dude who is going really hard Shroud into France 4. Or actually, Shroud was one of the least played spirits. Maybe it's just a complete anomaly. Let's take a look. Shroud France 4 has 462 games played. whereas France 5 has 60 and 3 has 205. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, we were talking about this just a minute ago. Gosh, I really hope that there's like a Dr. Shroud. A Dr. France Shroud guy. That would be really funny to me. I can't imagine any other way for getting that kind of an anomaly in the data. But moving on to multi-spirit, it's a very similar thing. And our Shroud versus France 4, does that disappear? Surely it must. Where is Shroud? Hold on. I can't read. There it is. Shroud of Silent Mist. France 4, yeah. Down to just a minus 1.4% at France 4. Yeah, there's something silly going on there. There's one sneaky guy who's got a couple hundred games in that one specific matchup. All right, but this last chart here is why do games end, right? We can either lose from Destroyed Presence, the Invader deck, adversaries, or Blight Pool, or we can win at terror levels 1, 2, 3, or 4, and also we could get a sacrifice victory. Invader deck running out basically doesn't happen at all. It's a grand stinking 0%, with exactly one spirit being at 0.2 or higher. There's a couple 0.1s in here, but Vital Strength of the Earth, right? The guy who is incapable of like winning the game, all he can do is not lose, makes a lot of sense. But this adversary loss condition, I already made a few predictions earlier, and we can see Vital Strength loses to the loss condition 71% of the time. 71% of the games that Vital Strength plays loses because of the loss condition. That's bad. Bringer Dreams and Nightmares is only at 58%. I figured it would be higher. Serpent Slumbering is 65.6%. That's fascinating. That's very revealing to me because I really thought that Serpent would do better. Our Right Innate kills towns very effectively, and evidently that is wrong. But yeah, France, it's really all comes down to that loss condition. As we can see, 41% of games end with the loss condition, whereas only 15% of games go to Blight. And Heart of the Wildfire is at 50% for blighting out. No one's getting Terror Level 1. That makes complete sense. Oftentimes with Terror Level 1, you need a Fear card to bail you out. And you can't get rid of France 6 Explorers with Fear cards. But Terror Level 2, we got 16%. Terror Level 3 at 20%. And then Fear Victory for 5% of games. Sacrifice. Ooh. Shifting Memory of Ages showing up in Sacrifice victories. I don't even know how that's possible. I just figured that's always going to be Volcano, which shows up 3% of games. Yeah, in total, we've got a 42% win rate across the board against France 6. I figured that I usually wind up getting Terror Level 3. The timing of getting victory against France is typically with the Second Slaves Rebellion, where that Second Slaves Rebellion allows you to kill a city as long as there's 2 Dahan in the land with the city. And so, we know exactly when this is going to happen, and we can just take the time to set it up. And it's a very common thing that you can just get all your pieces stacked up in just the right way and try and win on the spot with that event. Yeah, so Terror Level 3 is where I typically get those victories. The bottom of all these articles, Jonathan wrote down his personal thoughts as to why he thinks each of these spirits do what they do. Because remember, these are just numbers that we're looking at, and data is absolutely meaningless. We have to give meaning to the numbers. Numbers without meaning feels very uncomfortable, and so as you can tell, this whole time I've been selling you a story as to why I think certain things are happening. But this is John's attack at that same thing too. So once again, link in the description. Go check out what he wrote. Next, we're taking a look at Habsburg Livestock Colony. Yep, and yeah, most popular spirit is Stone's Unyielding Defiance. Basically, the guy that is purely made for the sole purpose of defeating HLC. Every single thing that HLC does is perfectly countered by Stone. If this is like an 95% win rate. I wouldn't be surprised. That's probably too high. I'm sure there's a lot of guys that are, told that it's so easy, and so they just do learning games and taking some losses just by inexperience. But as soon as you know, like, how to play Stone in this matchup, this is as close to a 100% win rate as I've ever seen. Yeah, and then after that, it immediately goes to like half, with Vengeance being next. Vengeance being great because of, taking that blight, converting into bonus damage. Makes a lot of sense. Habsburg pressures you to take that blight. Keeper is really popular. That's because Keeper is always really popular. Shifting Memory of Ages is not popular because Shifting Memory of Ages is never popular. With only 147 games played. With such low numbers of games for Shifting Memory, I have to assume that the numbers are just going to be absolutely absurd. They're going to be like all zeros. They're going to be like 100%. Like it's going to be really unreliable because each individual game is just such an absurd percentage of the data. Definitely not statistically significant. No clue what is statistically significant, but it's not 147. My recommendation in that Aces series was Rising Heat of Stone and Sand. Is he a popular spirit here? It's kind of in the middle at 450 games played. I'm much more confident with that than the Thunder Speaker one. We'll see how the win rate turns out. But yeah, multi-spirit once again. Stone, Vengeance, Rampant Green always shows up way higher because people like getting proliferated. Trickster at 49 games played. Oh my god. That's bad. Oh, average of 50 per level. That's pretty nuts. Oh, I forgot to take a look at the total by level. So it, besides level 6, right, it always, lollipops at the end. It's level 3 is where it's most popular. Level 4 is when you get the durable mechanic, which is where you really have to start taking blight, and that can just be very unfun to a lot of players. So it makes sense to me that you kind of get this cliff that builds up at HLC 3, and then it drops off really hard when that really challenging, unfun mechanic shows up. Level 5 is also very challenging and unfun for a lot of people. So yeah, level 5 is the least popular. But I think that's consistent across the board. Every time that we take a look at these, it's always level 5 that is the least popular because I think you just kind of want to, get to the max. Win rates, 72.6% for Stone. Okay, not 95. Not even 95 at Habsburg 1. That's something, right? These win rates, whew, man, they fall off fast. Only 2 spirits are better than a coin flip, and it's Stone and Many Minds. After that, every single spirit is less than a 50% win rate, with 4 spirits being less than 15%: Devouring Teeth, Vital Strength, Lightning Swift Strike, and Shadows Flicker Like Flame. Woof. Where's my boy Rising Heat? Coming in at a good, rock-solid 29.5%. Man, what a great recommendation. Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. But, taking a look from the top, yeah, you got Keeper showing up 37. That's actually surprising me because Keeper is very much like a range 0 spirit. And we can't really get into Blighted Lands. Sometimes you just get like soft locked out of the game because you don't have the range to add wilds. Like let's say you have presence, you have some blight, and then you only have range 1 to add a wild token. You can't get it over. It's just a very awkward thing that can happen. Of course, you can still use your growth 4, blah blah blah, but it is just a little bit trickier. Surprised to see it so high. River. I feel like River's a very natural fit. River generally can't kill cities, but Habsburg doesn't make cities. So it works out pretty good. And River can choose where to do its damage by pushing everything into a blighted land and then knocking it out. So it makes sense that it would be higher up on the list with the super high 36.3. 1 in every 3 games you win. That's wild. This win rate's super low. Across the board, we're averaging 29.5% win rate. Whoa. I'm not sure what it has been for the other ones, but that's got to be the lowest. Maybe Russia will be lower, but man, that's brutal. How do we do in multi-spirit? Fractured Days coming in at 51% and everyone else is less. Whoa. So, what happened to Stone? Stone was at 72%. Where is he now? Getting held back by his team? Yeah, 41.1%. He's going to be losing some 31 percentage points. Rampant Green coming in at 49.9. Proliferating People's really nice. And Green, actually, like, just being able to skip lands and not get LCs is very nice to have in your tool bag. Trickster was the one that only had like 40 games played, right? So it's hard to read too much into this 16% win rate. Rising Heat, pretty much unaffected, sitting at 36% win rate. Oh yeah, Wildfire. One of the cool things with Heart of the Wildfire is that you basically just don't take escalations because you start with 2 extra blight on the board. Where is he in the solo list? 21.6%. Okay, not as cool as I had hoped. But Wildfire does feel, I mean, I enjoy that matchup. I think it's a lot of fun. But yeah, 21.6 that's pretty brutal. So once again, I have the difference between solo and multiplayer. And while I was pulling it together, there was a few other spirits that I wanted to draw attention to. Vengeance was a really, really popular one. It was the second most popular behind Stone. And in solo, it had a 33% win rate, and in multiplayer, a 24.5% win rate. So it's 8.5% better in solo than multiplayer. But where does that fall across the board? Vengeance was like kind of up, but about like top quarter maybe for solo. And then in multiplayer, it's sitting at the bottom like 5 or something like that. Really, really bad in solo, much, much worse in multiplayer than solo. Another one that I want to draw attention to is Ocean, because Ocean has the problem where if you try and drown a town, it just doesn't drown. And yet, despite that, Ocean outperforms a ton of spirits, and I have no clue how it does that. So that's really curious to me. The only thing I can imagine is that Ocean is going to be adept at making sure there's no cities in the game, because all the cities that can exist are going to be on the coast. Ocean can drown them all quite easily, and that's the only thing I can imagine being a advantage for the spirit. But everything else, I don't know, man. It seems kind of crazy. I'm just shocked to see that Ocean outperforms Heart of the Wildfire, for example. But yeah, back to this little chart here to see the winners and losers. The biggest winner for multiplayer is Lightning, going from absolute dumpster tier to not so bad, gaining 25 percentage points in its win rate. Turns out Lightning Boon's a really good card. And then Fractured Days gains the second most because it also has like a Lightning Boon type of effect. I mean, in addition to everything else that Fractured Days does. But yeah, Lightning Boon is a really, really sweet card. Green, as we would expect, right? Get the proliferation's very strong. Vital Strength, just because it's absolute dumpster tier in solo, but in multiplayer it does pretty good job of holding its own, holding the game steady. Every time a loss condition shows up, Vital Strength can just reclaim, which gives you your longest range growth option, and then just skip that land. So whenever Vital Strength's in your game, it's hard to get the LC. That's something that's like really, really useful. But yeah, Stone, Many Minds, those guys love playing solo. Eyes Watch loves playing solo. Starlight really likes playing solo. Starlight also has a Ravage skip, so it's really easy to just not take an early game loss condition. In many setups, you wind up just getting your very first Ravage gives you an LC, and you're kind of playing on the back foot for the rest of the game. But if that is just the way that it starts out in your game, Starlight just skips that land, just moves on with their life. Not a bad way to go. All right, moving on down. What individual rules give us the most difficulty? I think it's going to be obvious. It's going to be that level 4 and 4, 5, and 6 are all very tough. 4, I suspect, will be the most dramatic. 5, it sucks, but at the same time, by the time it comes up, you're already like pretty good and built up. As long as you're aware of the level 5 boost of invaders, you'll probably do just fine. But yeah, level 6 is where you actually start getting lost conditions. And we can see that it's level 2 that gives us the biggest problems across the board with an overall minus 12% to your win rate. That is the one where you get the double towns instead of the city on your inland lands, which means that gives you a net +1 damage to the land. Two damaged buildings as opposed to 1 3 damaged building, which could have implications for your loss condition. Certainly, if you have like a starting town in your inland, it explores, it builds. That's explore 3 towns, then it gathers a town in. Now you're looking at a 9 damage ravage. Though, I guess in that specific situation, it doesn't matter, because if it's an 8 damage ravage with the city, it's all the same. I don't know. Anyways, we still have... Oh, gosh, I said that 2 is the biggest. 5 is the biggest at negative 12.5%. But still, my guess was wrong. Devouring Teeth really gets hurt with negative 28.5% win rate as soon as things become durable. Grinning Trickster loses 29 percentage points with that durable mechanic. Makes a lot of sense. Your Impersonate and Sight combo gets really, really bad. Because even at Hasbro 6, it's your Ravage that does more damage. It's not that the Invader piece itself does more damage. It's the Ravage action. And so Impersonate and Sight doesn't get the job done. The positives are always kind of funny to look at. Shifting Memory of Ages, gaining 12 points at Habsburg 1. But Shifting Memory is always one of the most unpopular spirits. And so everything here is probably just noise. Really, this is a very unpopular adversary in general. Also, we have to recognize that this is locked behind another DLC. And so you can imagine that most people, well, everyone's going to have the base game. Most people are going to have Branching Claw. That was the original expansion. And then, each expansion thereafter, we can expect fewer and fewer people to own. And that's a reason why Hasbro is just going to be generally less popular. And we're going to get more and more unreliable data just because of a lack of quantity of plays. Sharp Fangs really does not like Habsburg 5 at negative 28%. Level 4 gives a minus 19%. A lot of people like to say that Fangs really sucks against Habsburg because you can't use your Ranging Hunt and Blighted Lands. And so where you want to do damage versus where it's effective to do damage doesn't match. But there's a lot of tricks that you can do. It's not easy, but it's not completely unplayable. And here we have the same exact data for Multi-Spirit. With Trickster with like 40 games played, minus 31% going from the 5 to the 6. I don't know what's going on there, but it don't look too good. Here, this one shows level 4 being the most devastating. So I'll take that for mild validation. And then here we have, why do games end? And considering that our adversary loss condition is tied to taking Blight, it's very sensible that it's an about equal amount of losses come from the LC versus just a good old-fashioned Blight, expiring the whole Blight pool. Since really, taking Blight in general, advances both of these causes. Makes a lot of sense to me. Stone's Unyielding Defiance wins 51% of their games at Terror level 2. Oh man, kills invaders so effectively that they don't even have time to build up. Like, not enough fear is generated in the game to make it to Terror level 3. Terror level 4, we got Many Minds, as we would expect. I would think that Bring Our Dreams and Nightmares down here. Yep, 16%. Compare that to... your 48% to loss condition. That's something. But yes, when all the win rates are really low across the board, we can see our LCs and our blight run out are just dramatically higher. When you're more likely to get an LC than you are to just win. It's a pretty rough looking data set. Who's this here? River gets 32% of their games ending at a terror level 2 victory, and 0% of games going to fear. Yeah, that makes sense. It's actual 0% goes to fear. Same with Thunder Speaker, has 0 going to fear. Once again, we have a lot of sacrifice victories for Shifting Memory. And now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's that major with the all-consuming void. Maybe that's how Memory is getting their business done. If you're just gonna be pulling so many majors, you just hit that +9 energy button and just frickin' send it. It ends games in solo, like absolutely. And Shifting Memory loves to go for that turn 1 major draft because you don't have to forget a card. So heck, why not? You can just win the game on turn 2. The way that the Fear deck is built for Habsburg is very interesting. It's like 4-6-3, I think, at the top level. 5-6-3, yeah. So you spend an absurd amount of time at a low Fear level. And obviously this is because you can't have too many cards in Terror level 3, or else, the fact that you just don't make cities gets kind of silly. In fact, at Habsburg 2, you actually have negative pressure. It's a 4-5-2 invader deck, so you actually have less fear cards than default at that level, I just think that's really funny. But the implication of that is that there's actually a ton of Terror level 3 victories. It's the most common way to win the game because you're just kind of like you're fighting, and the moment you hit Terror level 3, instant victory. It's a very common way for things to go. It's just because there aren't cities there to kill. It just doesn't happen all that often. After you get that Habsburg 5 city removed, it's like sometimes there's like a city left in the game, and it's just a matter of getting into Terror level 4. So it feels like you only have 11 fear cards in the fear deck, which is less than Prussia. Because once you get through that 11th fear card, bam, game just ends. Yeah, Habsburg is a tricky adversary. It does a little bit of everything really well. I guess it doesn't have any steroids for your Explore, but obviously it has the builds, it has the Gather, it has the bonuses to the Ravage, it has the Blight mechanic. It's a very complicated adversary. And considering the really low win rate, maybe I should do more content with Habsburg, just so that way I can hopefully provide a guide on how to play against the adversary. Maybe that would be something that'd be useful. Once again, at the end of this article, we have lots of thoughts written up by John. So if you want to see what he has to say, in the description, check it out. Give him some love. And our last article for today, we're taking a look at Russia. This is my least favorite adversary. I've basically soft banned it from the channel just because I don't want to be miserable. I want to record games where I'm having fun and it's just things that I enjoy, and so I just don't enjoy Russia. So for me personally, taking a look at this is much more of a curiosity than something I'm going to want to, make use of. But anyways, going up true solo, our two most popular spirits is going to be Keeper and Lure. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Keeper is just the most popular spirit in the game. It just so happens that Keeper is also absolutely OP against Russia. Keeper doesn't start with a lot of tools, but all the tools that he does start with are all incredible against Russia. Wild tokens, amazing. Blight removal, essential. And so that's really all it takes to beat Russia. If you don't have those tools, you have to draft them. There's no way around it. Lure of the Deep Wilderness, with that special rule, can turn off Russia 3. And so if you're ever forced to play a Russia game and you don't know what to do, the recommendation is just play Lure. Makes sense. Really, really popular. And I suspect he'll have a really high win rate as well. Or not, as we saw with Stone, right? I mean, I guess Stone still had a 72%, which is really high, but wasn't 90s. If you don't know how to play the spirit and you're playing it because you've been told you're supposed to play it, then that can suppress the win rate. wow, the games played at Russia 5 is just like nothing. Russia 5 for me is really like, if Russia 5 didn't exist, I think it would be a much more fun adversary. Those fear bombs is like the single thing that really gets me shit in my britches. If it was up to me, I would actually trade Russia 5 and France 5. I would switch those two around, and I think it would make both adversaries more fun, interesting, and balanced. With France receiving the fear bombs, France, just because of France 6, has these explorers just kind of kicking around all over the board, and turning them into small threats would be great. I think that would be really, really good and healthy. France has just like a whole lot of whack-a-mole, and if you can handle like their one problem a turn, France falls over. But having those little fear bombs would mix it up a little bit, make it a little bit more dynamic. And, you know, blight removal is completely irrelevant against France, so it's like, it's a rule that beats something that you don't care about anyways. Now, with Russia, you need blight removal. Really, once again, it's the level 6 rule that makes the level 5 rule become more relevant, because level 6 incentivizes you to take blight every turn. And so now making blight removal less OP or less essential would be a really, really good thing for Russia. These stupid, you know, fear bombs where you get punished for trying to play the game, and yeah, anyways, that's my pet recommendation for how to improve these. Completely untested, only exists up here. Unpopular spirits, Fathomless Mud of the Swamp. Turns out making more explorers against the adversary, or explorers, are OP, is not good. Shroud of Salamis. This is actually a really hard... It took me a lot of tries when I went for my full suite of level 6 victories with Shroud. Russia was the hardest because they don't make buildings. They don't... So, like, you know, you try and set up these fear farms, but you can't. Like, it takes a lot of work to get fear farms up and running just because Russia's, you know, completely generic when it comes to those builds. In the setup, there's no bonus setup either. There's no bonus buildings anywhere for us to pick up. Just a really awkward start for Shroud. And so, I mean, it's an unpopular spirit in general, but it also just feels awkward, plays awkward against Russia. So that makes a lot of sense. Sharp Fangs being really popular, Many Minds being really popular, you know, Beast Spirits against the, you know, Beast LC. One way of beating the Russia LC is just to make a lot of beasts. Makes a lot of sense to me. Sunbright Whirlwind, a very low fear spirit with great explorer control. I think that makes sense as a very, very playable matchup, right? You can just, you know, with your growths, you can get all the explorers into one land, pay 2 energy, and then knock out, you know, 5 explorers in one go, or kill 4, push 1. You know, it's a pretty solid play pattern. Not the best because, you know, Russia eventually adds 4 explorers a turn, so killing 4 for 2 energy when it's just going to add 4 right back isn't the winning play, but I digress. It's playable. For Multi-Spirit, expected to be the same thing. Generally, we're going to see Ramp and Green bump up a whole bunch. Trickster, that 38 plays. Who, man, that's like nothing. Each individual game is almost 3% of the data. Oh my golly. Oh, the data for Trickster's worthless. All right, here we go. Here is our win rates in solo. I thought Lure was going to be high, like 70s or something. It is not. 55.1. Even though we get to turn off Russia 3, you still got to play the game, and it's not an easy game to play. It's a fascinating how big the drop-off is. We're going to see this again later, but going from 71% to 55%, going from level 5 to level 6 is a very dramatic change. But Keeper sitting at a 75% win rate. Whew, that's pretty nuts. For my ASA series, I wound up using Emberide Behemoth as my pick for Russia, but that was because of being able to add 2 Wilds tokens a turn. Obviously, Keeper and Lure have the ability to add Wild tokens. Where's Volcano? Volcano also gets Wild, sitting at 35%. Volcano can do, well, he can really only kill them with his innate power by exploding. Them, I mean explorers. But the Wilds token is really good. Put like a Wilds token with the Badlands in a Beast land, and then you can just kind of keep that protected, with escalation, so on and so forth. Let's see what other interesting standouts they have here. Even though it's, with the exception of Keeper, it's a very smooth decrease in win rate. I feel like there's no like individual like line where there's like a 20% drop off. You've got Keeper and Lure being the two that are above 50%. Stone is the next best. Starlight, Water. Starlight has an innate power that removes Blight. And the Blight removal is one of the most important things in this matchup. And so it makes sense to me. You can build into Water with Starlight, and then that'll give you a ton of play with the Spirit. Heart of the Wildfire is not great. I keep on trying to convince myself that it's a decent matchup. I mean, okay, Heart of the Wildfire can play against Russia. It's really hard, but you can play. He's one of the best spirits for going for that, trying to win like after 3 fear cards, where you take the first fear bomb, but you don't get the second fear bomb. Maybe it's not 3, however many it is for Russia to get to Terror level 2. But Wildfire can play for that kind of play pattern. Just, destroy all the buildings, produce a quick bit of fear, and just barely win really, really quickly. But the data shows that an 11% win rate, maybe it's not as good as I imagine it in my mind. Lightning Swift Strike being at 22%. I mean, 22% is not good, but I mean, that's like at the 50th percentile for being able to beat Russia. This is a matchup where you really want Raging Storm. That's like your only counterplay. I don't even think I've ever even tried that matchup because it just looks so miserable on paper. Many Mind sitting at only 40%. Woo-wee. Maybe those fear bombs is too much for Many Minds to handle. When you just try and fear rush the game, it gets rough. Where's Shadows? Yep, Shadows is sitting towards the middle. Shadows produces an absurd amount of fear and has good Explorer control. So Shadows, I mean, obviously this is base Shadows, which is the worst version of the Spirit, but other versions of Shadows aren't horrible into Russia. You just kind of like one of the ways to beat the fear bombs is to produce so much fear so fast that there is nothing there for the fear bomb to interact with. And that is definitely the kind of play pattern that Shadows naturally falls into. And then here we have Multi-Spirit with Fractured Days flying up to the number 1 position at less than 50%. Where's Fractured Days here? Probably terrible. Fractured Days, I don't know. It's like upper middle at 29.8. But yeah, Fractured Days, doing OP combos with your team. Keeper drops down, loses a ton of percentage points. Where's Lure? Yep, Lure goes into 4th place. Starlight right there. Serpent is shocking to me. Serpent, I feel like, really struggles into Russia because it's just the numbers aren't quite there, and just like, defending everything without the Dahan movement just doesn't really work as a strategy. Taking the Blight is tricky for adding your presence. I've just really struggled with that matchup. I mean, that's speaking of solo, which would be, 15%. Okay, I feel more justified. Obviously, Serpent is, in the similar way to Green, to Fractured Days, is a spirit that's built for multiplayer. So here we go. Once again, I have all of the solo win rates, the multiplayer win rates, and taking a look at the difference, where the higher the number, the positive numbers are better in solo, and the negative numbers are better in multiplayer. So we can see that Keeper, of course, going from an absurdly high win rate to just, a middling win rate, has the biggest difference in favor of solo play. 26 points better in solo than in multiplayer. And then Sharp Fangs is also better in solo. Once again, Branch and Claw showing up together. Trickster had so few games played. I think that one had like 30 games played or something. So this data is completely unreliable. Many Minds reliably always shows up as just a really bad team player. Very selfish spirit, doesn't work well with others. stone, lure, spirits that have no support, whereas the ones that are very good, or at least a lot better in these multiplayer games, serpent being the most dramatic, 29 points in favor of multiplayer, and green and fractured days following right up, three of like the best support spirits in the game. Lightning Swift Strike, Lightning's boon is just absolutely insane, and River with the best energy support in the game. So, it makes sense that all of those guys show up as, being so favorable towards multiplayer games. It's also very interesting. There's a decent number, and by a decent number, I guess like more than one, spirit who just like doesn't care either way. Shroud, Shadows, two Fierce spirits said exactly the same. In win rate. Wildfire, like half a percentage point. It's kind of irrelevant. Just interesting to see there being a few sitting in that little space. And which levels of Russia add the most difficulty? Surely it's got to be Russia 3. That's where, you get all those extra ravages. I expect Russia 3 to be huge. Russia 4 makes it such that I guess even with, because the escalation adds 2 explorers, and then a level 2 adds 2 explorers, so level 4 doesn't really change the dynamic. You're still taking 4 explorers every single turn. In fact, you can make the argument that it's almost easier, because then you're not getting escalated every single turn, just every other, but I guess the predictability is a thing too. But yeah, I expect it to be 3 and then 5 to be the 2 most devastating levels. Though we did see, I think we saw earlier, there's like a 25-point drop for level 6 for someone. 23 points for Fractured Days. Was that who we were looking at? Or Sharp Fangs takes minus 24, minus 22. That's some bad beats, one right after the other. Biggest drop off is Many Minds with those Fear Bombs. It loses 53 percentage points on their win rate. Oh my god. I think it's the biggest drop off of every single level for this entire thing. I mean, it was a while ago when it did the other 3, but I don't think anything else broke 50%. That is absolutely freaking insane. Losing 53 percentage points in your win rate just because of Fear Bombs. Oh my god. Stone's Unyielding Defiance loses a lot of win rate, and I expect that that's because of the loss condition. Stone doesn't have any default ways of protecting its beasts. Stone does really well with the bonus damage from Explorers because it makes your counterattacks a lot better, and that's a good reason to play Stone into Russia, but you do have to draft into a solution for that loss condition. That is something you must find a way to deal with. And so I guess if that's something you're not prepared for, you're probably going to take a lot of bad beats when you get to Russia 1. Also, Russia 0 just doesn't have a loss condition. Like, it does, but you can't kill beasts until you get to Russia 1. So that's kind of a funny thing. But yeah, as we can see here, it is Russia 3 and Russia 5 is our 2 really big ones. 21% drop off for all the extra ravages and 25% drop off when it comes to that Fear Bombs. Yeah, when people talk about Russia, like, it's these 2 rules. Everything else exists, but no one cares. I mean, like, sure, people talk about Russia 2, but interestingly, it helps people win more because it injects more fear into the game, where Russia doesn't have a lot of buildings. At the start of the game, there's just like not fear to collect. You have a town city, like, that's it. But once you get to Russia 2, now every single explorer is an opportunity to produce fear. So that makes sense that just adding that little push rule without the devastating part with, the ravages and all that stuff. Yeah, that actually makes complete sense to me, that Russia 2 actually makes it easier. And I guess because this takes like your win rate, makes it go up, it means that 21% is just an even more dramatic fall. Because if you were to compare 3 versus 1, it would be a difference of about 15% as opposed to a difference of 21%. Interestingly, that 4 gives us 2% win rate in our favor. So maybe not taking escalations over and over and over again is a good thing. I don't know. Could just be noise. There's not Russia's not very popular because it's not very fun. And people like having fun. So I guess it is quite possible that low play rates leads to very silly data. Whoo, look at that. Every spirit just getting dumpstered. Multi-spirit for level 5, minus 32% win rate on that node. Oh, man. Brutal. Yeah, once again, about the same level for level 3, minus 22% on your win rate. Just devastating. All right, why do games end? Invader deck runs out. Yeah, it doesn't happen. If you manage to make it all the way to the end of the Invader deck, honestly, that should just be an alternate win condition against Russia. Like, it's hard to get that far. Like, because you wind up doing every single stage 2 card and every single stage 3 card. You get all these turns where literally every single land in the entire board is ravaging once, if not twice. It gets absolutely ridiculous. I like the idea of an alternative win condition for this. That would be funny. But yeah, loss condition, not a big deal. It's 20%. I imagine we're Stone. Stone's Unyielding Defiance, 34% losses. Makes sense, right? They have no way of protecting it, and they like to let the Ravages through. Makes a lot of sense to me. Not a lot of spirits produce beasts. Sharp Fangs, yeah, 6%. Many Minds, 3% for that. Lure, 4%. So it makes sense that the guys that can make beasts are much more insulated from the LC. But yeah, it's this Blight Pool running out that just really hurts. 50% of games, ever so 50.3, more than a coin flip to just get blighted out every game. Brutal. Terror level 2 is the most popular way to win. And you know, here's your takeaway for if you're trying to go up against Russia, try to win in Terror level 2. The longer the game goes, it just gets worse. The reason why Russia is really frustrating to play against is because to win, you have to be extremely aggressive. But your aggression needs to just hit the nail right on the head. Because if you don't win, right when you get to Terror level 2, you get smoked. And it's just brutal. Because, yeah, you get to Terror level 2, and the issue is really that you get the next Fear Bomb, the Terror level 3 Fear Bomb, and then you get just Explorers just all over the place with the oscillating 2s and 3s on your Explorers, and you're always, like, almost there, and then you can just never quite close out the game, and then you just, 50% blight out. You start trying to defend, you start trying to stay alive, and that's just a losing proposition. So, yeah, you just got to try and win, like, really tight and quick. For Fear victories, what do we got? Many Minds, of course. Starlight has 18% of their games go to Fear victory. That's wild to me. I mean, I know they have good blight removal, but dang. Maybe they just don't have the early offense. Typically, Starlight goes into majors. One more above 10% is Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares. Sure, makes perfect sense. After that, it's down to like 9% for Lure, 9% for Sharp Fangs, and then down from there. Oh yeah, one spirit I forgot to talk about this whole time was Ocean's Hungry Grasp. This is another one where, just like Habsburg, where if you try and drown Explorers, they just like bounce out, and then you don't get the energy and all that jazz. So that's a really, really tricky matchup there too. For that reason, right? You just like can't interact with the invaders. Very, very frustrating. Once again, we have John's notes. So anyways, that was my honest to God first time reading through these. I've been wanting to, do some more coverage of these stats just so I could read the stats myself. I find this stuff really, really interesting. It's very humbling to see the numbers in reality. I feel like, content creators such as myself, we present a very filtered view of the game. I generally don't like to post losses. I feel like that's very frustrating if you're like following along with the game the whole time, and then, it turns into a loss, and it can feel like it was a waste of your time. You don't get the cool payoff for the victory at the end. I mean, whenever I watch someone else lose a game, I'm like, man, what the heck? I was disagreeing with some of your choices, but I was kind of like, playing along, trying to see if maybe I could learn something. And then I see that you lose anyways, and then you should have done some other thing. So I hope that, if you have those kinds of perceptions where, if you play this game a lot vicariously by watching playthroughs, that seeing numbers validates your own personal experience, right? If you're personally thinking like, man, how do they win this game, so often, right? I feel like I'm holding on to a 10% win rate. Well, take a look. We got bunches of spirits that are at the 10% win rate level. So, if you have a 10% win rate, you are on par. You're not bad if you're at only a 10% win rate against Russia. Well, anyways, that's all for me today, guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a glorious day.